Welcome to Rethinking Parenting. My name is Christina Young, and I teach parents of teenagers. Join me here on Fridays to learn practical tools, strategies, and scripts designed to help you manage the challenges of raising teens in today's complex world. Welcome back to Rethinking Parenting with Christina Young. Today's episode is called Dodging Drama at the Family Barbecue this summer. It's a solo episode, of course, based on conversations that I've heard in my office recently. It seems like it's hard during these transition times for parents to really focus on the excitement ahead, the freedom, the lack of schedule. There's also angst, and the angst is real because there are some obligations that will be difficult to manage. So, how to model best practices for our teens as they interact with relatives who can be unpredictable, insulting, demeaning, lacking in boundaries, drunk, difficult. I know some of you are probably hosting these folks in your own home, or God forbid, you're going to their home, or you're vacationing together. These people are out there. It makes life complicated. Put your seatbelts on. By the end of this episode, you will know 3 strategies for boundary setting and speaking up in terms of summer days spent with the relatives while you all try to enjoy a quote unquote vacation together. I know many of you are just wrapping up the school year and you're just putting the finishing touches on your summer travel plans. I want you to feel empowered as you make those decisions. In terms of spending time with Aunt Susie, Grandpa Joe, nothing is worse than feeling like a victim as a result of your own plans. I like to think of my job here as helping to fill your metaphorical tool belt so that you feel prepared for almost every situation. The more tools, the better, right? Because each circumstance tends to require a different, more nuanced tool. Here's what I find for myself, but also for my clients. If you reach in your back pocket or in your metaphorical tool belt and you're all out, you have no more tools. This is unfortunately when we tend to feel most anxious. And when we feel anxious without planning on it, we tend to get rigid and hyper controlling. Again, not on purpose, but simply because we run this old tape in our head that says when you're nervous or anxious or things feel out of control or you feel a little helpless, clamp down, get rigid, get tight and over controlling, and that might be your only way through. See if you notice this now that you've become aware of it. If we're at all self-aware, if we're the type of human who might set intentions or goals for each day, then you can be sure that you would never, ever set the intention, let me be as rigid and controlling as possible today. That's a good idea. Of course not, never. But this is ultimately what happens. You've seen it in yourself. I'm sure you've seen it in your spouse. It's what happens when we feel helpless. And feeling helpless as a parent is the worst. So the first tool I want to teach you for managing difficult relatives while you're traveling is this. Give yourself permission to pause. That's tool number 1. If you listen to my podcast, if you work with me in my office, you've heard this tool plenty of times. It keeps showing up. I know. I can't believe I'm talking about it again. But here's the thing. It is such a powerful tool. Why is it so powerful? Because it's everything, honestly. Permission to pause is the thing that buys you time when you feel reactive, when somebody has insulted you, when somebody has pissed you off. You need to buy time. And when you give yourself permission to pause, that is exactly what happens. It allows you to step away and return to a healthier headspace so that you don't go blowing up a relationship, saying things you might regret. So when that difficult relative says something outrageous in front of your kids this summer, I want you to say this. Here's an example. You can say, oh, wow, are you okay? We're going to need to pause here and take a break. That's it. You take your teenager's hand or you give him the eye and you make a beeline out of the barbecue. Head to another part of the property. What are you modeling in this moment? You're modeling that when people say something rude or insulting, you step off. You do not join them in that attack. You don't hang around and wait to be demeaned further. You don't hurl insults back at a human who is so lacking in self-awareness. Walking away immediately demonstrates that the other person has crossed a boundary and they've hurt you. Responding in the moment, like I said, would likely escalate the situation. Stepping off, collecting yourself in private allows you to access your prefrontal cortex, which of course is the home of all wise decision making. It's where your strong moral compass is. It's where your judgment lies. What happens next, though? Well, things could go in many different directions after you step off, after you give yourself permission to pause. But that's for another podcast. Most important to know is that when you do step away, you are smarter because you're not shooting from your hip. You're not reacting in an escalated manner, and you're modeling this for your kids. Okay, let's talk about tool number 2, the one-liner boundary. I like to also call this the back pocket phrase. Again, you've heard of this if you're listening to my podcast, but it applies here and it so demands review before you go interact with tricky relatives. Okay, what is the purpose of this one, the one-liner boundary? It's to set a clear line without inviting debate. So this is when you've decided you don't want to stand up and exit. Maybe you've tried that before and it like freaked people out. Or maybe you're trying a whole bunch of different responses this weekend. You already tried that one. Now you're going to try this one. How to use it. You definitely want to practice these ahead of time. Like I said, I call them back pocket phrases, and they're particularly helpful because both kids and adults need them throughout their life. They're short, they're firm, they're concise. They're statements that you can repeat if necessary, or you can drop them into a conversation calmly just one time. Let me give you a couple examples. We don't talk to each other like that. I like it. Succinct, firm. Here's another one. That's not something I'll discuss. Great. The third one, I don't let people speak to me that way. To me, that third one begs a calm, emphasis on calm, standing up and walking away from the table calmly. Why do these work? These phrases assert your limits while shutting down the rude behavior succinctly. There are 2 keys to success in delivering these back pocket phrases. 1, give eye contact, firm eye contact. 2, no rolling your eyes, no big sigh or like banging your hands on the table when you walk away. You are modeling what a calm, controlled response looks like, which is entirely different than a reactive, shooting from the hip, escalated kind of reaction. That's not what you want. Okay, let's talk about tool number 3. This one is called the tag team with your teen. The purpose of this one is to model and reinforce boundaries together. Okay, so before the visit with Aunt Karen, you're going to agree on some kind of rescue signal or code that your teen can use if they happen to feel cornered, criticized, helpless, desperate, like somebody's saying something terrible to them, somebody's being rude to them. So decide in advance, that's the key, how you'll support each other if someone crosses a line. So here's an example. Pretend that you're both in conversation, but in the same space, but you're talking to different people. So you're not really hearing what Aunt Karen is saying to your teenager, but your teenager makes the sign that you agreed on. Maybe it's like the line across the throat, like, this is over. I can't do this anymore. You then step in and you say, oh, Johnny, let's go grab that thing you needed in the car. That's it. They sent you the signal and you agreed to rescue, which, by the way, you never hear me say rescue your teen. In this situation, I'm agreeing. Yeah, it's a planned rescue. It's not an impulsive rescue. Why does this work? It strengthens your relationship. It helps your teenager feel protected and supported because, let's be honest, did they want to attend that family gathering with all the Aunt Karens? No, they did not. They didn't want to be there anyway. Why? Because oftentimes it's the relatives who can be a little demeaning, insulting, harsh. So your goal is to plan together, what's our proactive strategy for handling these uncomfortable situations? Definitely helps your teenager feel supported. Anyone who works with me knows I love codes and signals. Human relationships are absolutely complicated, as we, the parents, already know. And we're constantly modeling much more than we realize for our teens how to interact successfully with other humans. But to do so requires an enormous amount of self-awareness and finesse and a keen eye for when and how to stick around and communicate your one-liner, for example, and when to retreat and exit the situation immediately because you can see it's going downhill quickly. It takes years of practice and many fails to do this. But the more we can model this for our teenagers, the better. And the key also is to make time after, when you're back in a safe place, there's no more relatives hanging around. Make the time to debrief carefully with your kid. Ask them, how did that go for you? How did it feel? How can we change it? What can we do better next time? See how successful your attempts were to manage all of this so that the next time you're in a situation like that, which, by the way, might be breakfast the next morning if you're staying at their house, you need to have a clear kind of plan. And obviously, you need to build on experience. Okay. Now you have 3 clear tools in your metaphorical tool belt as you approach the summer holidays, the barbecues, the traveling with the somewhat difficult relatives. If you remember one thing from this episode, I hope it is that you should think ahead and be proactive, be prepared in advance for yourself, but also on behalf of your teenager. Think aloud together about who might be difficult and how you might manage that person. When we feel equipped for situations, we don't find ourselves hijacked by that anxiety I talked about earlier that can often lead to the ruptures in relationships. I want to talk to you about an organization I really admire here in Miami. If you're looking for a way to make a real difference, LEAP helps formerly incarcerated women, many of them moms, rebuild their lives through in-prison education, safe transitional housing, and job training at Dragonfly Thrift Boutique. Shop with purpose, learn more, and donate at www.leapforladies.org and be a part of a woman's second chance. Thanks so much for joining me today. If you're looking for more parenting tips, find me on Instagram at CMY Therapy. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to today's episode of Rethinking Parenting. If you enjoyed the episode, please be sure to rate, follow, and subscribe. I read all of your comments, feedback, and suggestions, and I so appreciate them. So keep sending them in. Thank you.